Chapter 1928, Immortal Infant. The holy sword of judgment, the eternally blazing day of judgment, pours out its power to make the glory last forever and to purify the world through the raging fire. As soon as the sword was swung, a raging golden sea of fire turned into a torrent that wrapped around an evil crow. The flames formed a huge vortex that completely enveloped it, and then began to burn it mercilessly. Ernie Crow's eyes were cold. He raised the demon-devouring spear in his hand and began to absorb the power. And the moment his gun body touched the eternal flame, it was like dry wood touching a raging fire, and it ignited with a swoosh. A look of surprise flashed in the eyes of Ernie Crow. His demon-devouring spear can absorb supernatural powers, but O'Brien's ability comes from his most devout belief, which is the holy power to wipe out all demons. Anything that is attached to the flame will be burned, especially the power of the Dark Devil, which is its favorite fuel. Call. The flames climbed up the gun barrel and directly attached themselves to his body, beginning to burn mercilessly. Quack. People can clearly hear the wailing coming from the mouth of the evil crow. Zhang Yi thought to himself, no wonder the Junjing Church has the confidence to lead this action. Like the Ao family, they possess ancient power that is specifically designed to deal with the followers of the Druk clan. He couldn't help but think that in the history of this planet, except for the most unsuccessful first generation of humans who died early, every subsequent generation of humans had to go through a process, fighting with the Druk gods. Faced with a race that possesses a vitality that even gods fear, that evolves infinitely, becomes stronger as time goes by, and even cannot be completely killed, people in later generations will become more and more desperate. From the Yihan tribe to the Yak people, Yihuan, and then to their sixth generation of humans, no one can escape this fate. Therefore, each generation will have its own methods to seal these Druk gods and those who possess their power. Could it be that the power that our Huashu nation's ancestors relied on was Qimendunjia? Zhang Yi couldn't help but have such doubts in his mind. However, he felt a huge regret in his heart because most of the ancient culture of Huashu Kingdom disappeared in the long river of history and was not preserved for various reasons. Even someone as smart as Yang Xinxin could only get a glimpse of the truth by studying the fragments of history. This is really a great pity. Now is not the time to regret. We must continue to fight. Zhang Yi faced an evil crow. He directly transformed the divine power in his hand into a long chain, swung it out of his hand, and threw it over. If it cannot be killed, then there is no point in killing it. He wants to try to drag a crow into his own alien dimension. When Ernie Crow saw the chain coming at him, he immediately raised his gun and blocked it. But at the moment the chain touched the black spear, it suddenly blossomed like a flower. The long chains rustled, and hundreds of thousands of black branches extended from the chains, densely packed, instantly enveloping the space around the evil crow. The density of the chain branches was enough to make people with trypophobia faint. The space within a radius of several thousand meters was completely crowded. Even other aliens had to make room for Zhang Yi. A large number of crow soldiers were directly crushed to death by the dense chains. The core of the divine refining is the Green Knight boss. Boss is not an alien with strong combat power, but he has the most powerful life ability, which means that after his death, his body will become an excellent weapon. Nowadays, almost all of his components have been replaced by Liu Karen, but he still retains the core of Sword in the Tree. So, as long as energy is continuously supplied, it can continue to grow. Thus, in an instant it formed a huge cage. The tough, sharp, infinitely regenerating cage was covered with spikes. No matter how hard the evil crow chopped, it could not completely break through it. Layer upon layer of densely packed metal vines formed a spectacular giant black metal sphere in the air. Zhang Yi's hand was its root, and it seemed to be growing in the air, blocking out the sky and the sun. Ping, 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 ping. Ernie Crow's gun drawing speed is extremely fast, but as a user with almost enhancement abilities, he is more like a powerful general without any large-scale attack methods. Each of his strikes could cut off thousands of metal vines, so Zhang Yi let the divine refining regenerate tens of thousands of metal vines. So the metal ball became bigger and kept squeezing towards the center. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. The metal vines turned into swords and shot towards the evil crow from all angles. Ernie Crow is very fast, and he can use all parts of his body as weapons to block these attacks. But Zhang Yi's purpose was never to destroy his body. In less than a minute, he was completely wrapped by the huge metal vines. Even though he possessed great strength, he could not do anything to the Shun Lian, who had maximized his flexibility. Because at this time of divine refining, the material is no longer e-metal. Instead, it is a fusion of the highest level materials of mechanical culture, the materials of the six-winged King Yichuer's weapon. Come in! Zhang Yi suddenly exerted force and pulled the huge metal ball towards him. At the same time, a secondary door had already been prepared for him. Boom! 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 The evil crow bombarded the surrounding barriers violently, but it was useless. The metal ball just looked bulging, but it was not broken. A few seconds later, the metal ball fell into Zhang Yi's alien space with the force of thunder. He closed the secondary gate and took back the divine power. He successfully sealed an evil crow. Such a scene made the aliens present feel extremely shocked. As mentioned above, Ube's success was also due to the help of religious relics and the power of faith, but Zhang Yi relied entirely on his own strength and sealed an evil crow by himself. Even the proudest god King Aoer looked at Zhang Yi with a little more awe. In Europe, he always regarded King Arthur as his most powerful opponent. But the news of King Arthur's defeat spread throughout the world not long ago. At first, Ola was still a little bit unbelievable. But after spending a short time with Zhang Yi, he had to believe it. This guy is so powerful. The key is that he has too many cards up his sleeve, and his methods are endless. Zhang Yi successfully sealed a clone of the Hell Crow, but before he could breathe a sigh of relief, the Hell Crow that Sharon and others tried to seal split again. This time, the number of evil crows that appeared in front of everyone became 10. Their aura was stronger than before. This time, even Orla's eternal spear couldn't penetrate the defense of an evil crow. Their hearts began to grow heavy. If this continued, there would never be an end. Kant's voice rang in Zhang Yi's ears again. Old Zhang, let's run away. We will never win this way. Zhang Yi stared. He knew that Kant was right. The Drucker clan is the Drucker clan, an existence that even the great god-level texts cannot completely destroy. Even in a state of deep sleep, his dream clone is so terrifying. 10 huge evil crows surrounded everyone, while Liang Yu and others were still fighting against the crow army. The Sun Angels Middelin and Deng Shintong are enchanting everyone. Only in this way can they destroy the bodies of these ghosts. However, in the darkness, the number of ghosts is increasing. We have to get out of here, Zhang Yi said. Sharon, which direction should we go? Sharon confirmed the approximate location in front of him. Although limited by the huge size of this area, their maps were shrouded in a thick fog. But they could vaguely confirm that they were currently in a long canyon. Head towards 10 o'clock. Zhang Yi nodded. Hey, let's leave now. Gather the battle formation immediately. Everyone, get ready to follow me out of here. Zhang Yi shouted loudly. The troops from all groups immediately began to retreat and no longer fought with those difficult-to-kill monsters. Clang, clang, clang. In the darkness, red light flickered. Those were the eyes of the crow soldiers. They were wearing armor and were coming towards the side in a neat formation. Military formation momentum does not rely on the powerful military force of an individual, but the oppression brought by the massive undead army. It seemed that there was a chance to destroy them at the beginning, but in fact, the more time went on, the more desperate I felt. All the aliens felt a deep sense of fear and hastily retreated to Zhang Yi's vicinity. Zhang Yi opened a passage for them, allowing them to enter the protection of Sinluo Wanxiang. But at this moment, something strange happened. The water in the pond at my feet suddenly rose high, and a loud baby cry was heard from a distance. Wow, Then there was a huge roar. Boom! Not far from Zhang Yi and the others, a huge shadow rose up from under the water, almost becoming tens of meters high. Deng Shuntong put his hands together, released his special energy, and his long silver hair began to dance. He fought with the darkness for space, trying to illuminate everything in front of him. The power of Tiandao Star also had an impact on the darkness, causing them to hesitate in their steps forward. They finally saw clearly what the bulge was. An enormous, gray baby, covered in sticky liquid, crawled out of the puddle as if it had crawled out of a corpse. He was lying on the ground with his head facing the direction of Zhang Yi and the others. His head, which was more than 10 meters tall, was a deathly gray color, and the pupils of his eyes were completely black, which looked extremely weird. The second ghost leader, Immortal Evil Infant, appeared. A feeling of despair enveloped everyone's hearts. One ghost leader was already so difficult for them to deal with, let alone another one.
Wow.
The undead evil baby suddenly let out a louder cry, and then Zhang Yi and the others heard a rustling sound coming from a distance. The water surface was shaking wildly, and one ugly little monster after another emerged from under the water. They were covered in gray, like corpses, and looked somewhat like humans, but also like wild dogs. They had little hair on their bodies, and their eyes had degenerated from being in darkness for so long, but they had a huge mouth full of fangs. Hiss. Sha. They crawled out from the pool of water and crawled towards the undead evil baby at an extremely fast speed. There were rustling sounds in all directions. Even if you look up, you will find that there is a top high above you, and the rock walls are also covered with these ugly and strange creatures. Looking at them, Zhang Yi suddenly thought of the charred corpse that the AO clan members had brought out before him. At that time, everyone thought it was the corpse of a wild dog, but now, thinking carefully, aren't they these strange gray creatures? Crash. The ghosts fell from above like dumplings, howling and rushing towards everyone fearlessly. Zhang Yi's Senluo Wanxiang protects everyone, so he is not afraid of this. After a large number of ghosts fell into the dimensional gate, Zhang Yi immediately used some means to burn them with a raging fire inside the gate. The ghosts in the door howled miserably in great pain, but their bodies were as hard as steel and could not be destroyed. Zhang Yi ignored them for the time being. Anyway, their inner dimension gates would not impact the stability of the alien space. He could just collect them first and deal with them all at once later. These ghosts, even though they are just skeletons wrapped in gray skin, their bodies are extremely tough. Odibio said nothing, but asked his tribesmen to take out the corpse of a ghost from the cloth bag. Then he took out a bone dagger and nailed it into the corpse's head. He cast a shaman spell, and the mantis's head opened its mouth wide, spitting out a large mouthful of thick green phlegm onto the corpse of the ghost, and the sound of curses rang out. A large number of ghosts around seemed to be attacked by something. They covered their heads and let out terrible wails. But even so, many of them still rushed forward fearlessly. At this time, there were still many human troops that had not returned to the range of Senluo Wanxiang, and were stopped by them that fell from the sky. Their attack method was extremely disgusting. They would pounce directly at the aliens with their skinny, monkey-like, and withered bodies. Once they succeed, they will hold on to it like a thorn in their flesh and will not let go until they die. Then, they open their big mouths full of fangs that could fit a person's head, aimed at the alien's body, and bit it hard. Puff. The combat uniforms created with cutting-edge human technology seemed like they were made of cardboard in front of their fangs and could not be stopped at all. A wailing sound was heard instantly, and this bite made a huge hole in the alien warrior's waist. Some soldiers even failed to dodge, and were targeted by more than a dozen ghost hunters at the same time. After they swung their swords hard to kill and swept away a few ghost hunters, they were suddenly attacked from behind by a cunning ghost hunter, who bit off their heads with a crunch. Their fighting power might not be as strong as that of the Crow soldiers, but their numbers were obviously more than 10 times that of the Crow soldiers. Zhang Yi and his men's ears were filled with this chirping roar. In a short period of time, more than a dozen soldiers were bitten to death or injured by these little ghosts because they were outnumbered. With high-level combat power like Liang Yu and Uncle Yu, they acted quickly and killed a large number of nearby ghosts to ensure that all fighters could enter the domain of Senluo Wanxiang. Boom! The dead baby-like creature turned over in the water pool. It just lay in the water pool, staring at Zhang Yi and others. Suddenly, it opened its mouth, revealing an extremely ugly smile. Wow! A terrifying black energy wave was released from its mouth and rushed towards Zhang Yi's world. At the same time, those evil crows also began to attack, emitting extremely terrifying sound waves from their mouths. Even Zhang Yi couldn't rely on Senluo Wanxiang to defend against the attacks of the two ghost leaders at this time. But the others would not sit idly by and watch this happen. They cooperated tacitly and began to launch a counterattack. All things in the world are all-pervasive, and attacks from the inside out will not be affected in any way. Aoma rode on the eight-winged Pegasus, and the thunder in his hand was condensed into a huge spear more than 3 meters long. The eternal spear was aimed at an evil crow in front of it and thrown hard. The spear, which was packed with thunder, forced the crow to use its mind to deal with it, because there was no possibility of the spear missing, and it could only be shot down. And Clock and others also used their own methods. Even when facing such a dangerous situation, they were still able to remain calm and face it. Because all the strangers who came here today have experienced many dangers and fought their way out of mountains of corpses and seas of blood. Ochubu, Sarala, and others were also not idle. The holy fire was burning fiercely, and the black shadow blades broke through the air to resist the attack of the undead evil baby. But even if the two of them joined forces, they still quickly fell into a disadvantage. The energy attack of the undead evil infant is unexpectedly much stronger than that of the evil crow. Behind Xing Tu and the other two, there were a large number of alien warriors following. The two angels of the sun and the moon joined forces, and the light of the sun and the moon burst out from the holy sword. They went up against the sky and joined forces with the two great angels to fight the enemy. As vice-captains of the Knights Templar, both of them are very powerful and are close to the level of a cult. Sarah's men laugh. A cold sneer came from the side. It was a rather irritable voice, but this voice made people feel very unfamiliar. Zhang Yi glanced to the side and was suddenly surprised to find a strange face in the crowd. It was a woman, shrouded in a black burqa. Only her sharp chin and bright red lips could be seen. Zhang Yi never remembered that there was such a person in the crowd. She raised her hands. They were a pair of slender hands, but as pale as bones, with bright red paint on her nails, like human blood. Night is coming. These words came out of her mouth, and the next moment, the whole world seemed to fall into endless darkness. The light disappeared completely. However, the light in front of Zhang Yi and everyone else's eyes only disappeared for a moment, and then they could see everything around them clearly. The darkness of the sealed land was no longer a problem for them, and all the ghosts were seen by them. Instead, the ghosts fell into panic. The crow soldier looked around in confusion, like a blind man. Who are you? Andre, who was not far from the woman, asked in surprise, looking at her with a hint of caution. Even though we know that this should be a member of the human coalition, its sudden appearance still gives people a feeling of unease. She smiled coldly. I am Goddess of the Night, Nyx. Goddess of the Night? Everyone present looked thoughtful. They had never heard of such a person existing in the alien world. However, Cartiers and Canero were not too far away from her, and the way they looked at her showed a hint of helplessness. She's one of ours. Well, she's Sharon. After hearing this, everyone noticed that the Sharon Sutra had disappeared. Didn't he turn into a woman? Look at the figure and half of the face. They have changed so completely. It's not the so-called one mind and one body, but a complete change of appearance. As for Sharon or Nyx, no one knows their specific situation. After all, the information of Inhumans is confidential. No one asked any more questions. The Nyx could control the darkness, allowing them to see things clearly in the dark. This was a huge improvement for everyone. Liangyu raised the long sword in his hand and took the opportunity to slash out sharp black sword beams. Those crow soldiers who were unable to dodge were immediately chopped down. Shah. In the sky, the little ghosts were not affected by the loss of light and continued to attack. Dark night. Nyx turned his palm over, and the space around him became sticky in an instant. In the darkness, it seemed as if some strange substance appeared, like a swamp. Even if you fell from the sky, it would become extremely inconvenient to move. Nyx crossed her hands. Her pale palms were crisscrossed with her fingers spread out, and you could hear the sound of her knuckles. Nightmare. A sharp wind swept through the air, followed by a shrill wailing sound. The corpses of the little ghosts fell from the sky, their bodies covered with clean cuts. Sarah also merged into the darkness and began to ruthlessly reap the lives of those little ghosts. The undead evil baby's eyes lost focus, and it could not see anything, so its crying became louder.
Wow! Wow!
Its fleshy arms supported the ground as it tried to keep its upper body upright. Then it opened its mouth wide and launched indiscriminate energy attacks at its surroundings. The terrifying energy wave caused everything in the universe to begin to shatter, shattering layer by layer. It raised its right hand, and its zombie-like green arms smashed around randomly, and a punch just hit the position where Zhang Yi and the others were. A thick aura of death instantly enveloped the surrounding space, incomparably sticky and cold, as if a cold, poisonous snake had wrapped around the body. Boom! That huge arm smashed down mercilessly, and actually smashed a huge hole in Sunluo Wanxiang's defense. Dear viewers, thanks for staying with me. We'll try to get you more updates. Please like and subscribe and share the video with your friends. Love you all.